Right. Could you explain the RICO to people who don't know what that is? A lot of people have been asking a lot of questions. Could you get into a little bit of detail for that, please?
Yeah, the RICO Act is an act of racketeering, meaning that you have a fraudulent organization that are doing illegal actions under the auspicity of a legal action. So, an example would be I open up a McDonald's restaurant. A friend of mine opens up a Burger King restaurant. Another friend of mine opens up, let's say, a clothing store. And a couple of more friends open up a electronics store. However, we are all business partners and we associate with each other indirectly. However, there's also unscrupulous activity underneath the legal business. They could be engaged in drugs, it could be gang activity, but they use the front, in this case, a music label, in order to give the appearance as if they're operating legally within the constraints of the law. Then, in combination of the non reporting of taxes and things of that nature, this stuff starts to deteriorate. It doesn't help when you add social media like Instagram talking about who you're going to shoot and all this other kind of stuff. Those are what are called legal torts. Those are torts. When you actually make a threat on social media, that is assault. So now with the federal government, they take that into consideration and then they start building a racketeering case because they're saying that it's more than one entity that is creating a conglomerate criminal organization. And so when you start naming certain notorious names that are already registered, when you say Blood Gang, that's already registered as a notorious criminal organization for the last 40 years. So when you do those kind of things, now RICO comes into the picture.
Yeah, brother Conso, I talked about this as well. When he was going around, in particular Chicago, and he was like kind of taunting them people out there,
Mhm.
and kind of going to all these. I said that he's gonna put himself on the radar because he's inadvertently starting wars between different factions. If he's representing this faction and he's going to Chicago, where it's a totally different faction, disrespecting whatever, I think it was O Block, that might start something between rival, that's not even rival gangs, and start stuff between them in the streets or whatever, and retaliation, whatever, and spill over. And so, I mean, as we know, the FBI is always interested in gang task force and taking out gangs and things like that. So
Right.
so what do you think about that whole aspect, man? Of what he
Yeah,
was doing,
that was
perpetuating it.
yeah, that was a lack of guidance. It's unfortunate for him, as far as street activity, he's a young kid. Now that doesn't mean we're gonna feel sorry for the guy. He's an adult, but just because you're an adult doesn't mean you have experience. He was inexperienced in the nature of what he was promoting. When you come to Chicago, which is number two in the whole United States for what's considered, let's keep this clear, what's publicly stated as a gang activity. That doesn't mean it really is. But from a federal institution, they're going to put Chicago as a red flag. You're a blood gang member from New York. You go to Chicago, you make gang affiliated comments about O Block, which is one of the most dangerous blocks in the United States. You go there, you film yourself on Instagram, you talk about how you're not worried, you want the smoke. You're not worried about anything. Now the federal government says, well, we already have what is called back in the day the hip hop police, because a lot of these labels are racketeering fronts. That's where they get the money to market and promote these artists. And because of that, he opened up the floodgates to be investigated. Because what he didn't realize is the area in which he's talking about are real serious people that have been convicted for crimes. It's a lot of murder that goes on around O Block, unfortunately, like any other major city. And that wasn't just a wise move because he's a public figure. So the mistake he made, obviously the people around him, in my opinion, if I was building a business, or if they hired me to build the structure, let's say for Treyway or whatever the label name is, then my biggest concern would be the criminal aspect. If you got this guy Shotty, obviously he's the criminal aspect. He has to be as far away from Tekashi as possible. Regardless of whatever role he's playing, you can't walk the streets with this guy. So what it looks like, oh God, when him going to Chicago, he was more so a front man. He was the bag man. He was the young kid that could generate some revenue for a bigger system. Now, but he's got himself caught up in a bad situation because he looks like a mastermind, because he was traveling to LA doing the same thing. He went to New York and did some of the same stuff. You know, Chief Keef gets shot at. It just didn't. Chief Keef is from O Block, man. They're going to look at it that way. They're not going to look at it like an isolated incident. They're going to tie all that stuff in together.
Facts.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh God, real quick. I want to transition a little bit onto the financial aspect of this, because let's just take Tekashi's whole legal aspect and legal situation out of the equation real quick. We all know that he had $1.7 million in the bank, and you said that was a mistake. But I know my initial reaction of hearing 1.7, I was like, how the hell does this kid only have 1.7 million? You see the change, you see this, you see the whips, buying this, buying that. How in the hell does this kid only have $1.7 million? So Brother Khonsu, explain to the people what kind of financial hardships was he looking forward to later on in life, or what are some of the things that the young artists coming up that watch these platforms can prevent or do to not find themselves in financial straits like Tekashi looks like he's about to find himself in?
Well, let me say this on the face. You made an excellent observation. Oh God, Sam, you made an excellent. Let me tell you why. That's 1.7 he's willing to report. There is a reason he's getting denied bail. It's not because he's dangerous. 6ix9ine is far from dangerous. He's far from notorious. He's not plugged in with any heavy organization. They can't find his money. That's why they won't know.
On the streets.
Because he's a risk. He gets out, they don't know what he has access to. He may be young, but he's not that dumb. He fired his staff the day he knew he was going to jail. When he went on the interview, he knew he was going to jail. That wasn't like a surprise visit. The feds don't surprise you. You get warnings. You get told this is what's going on. So he allocated his funds. The problem was he thought if he left someone in his circle, gave him the ill advice to leave that much in the bank. He should have left no more than a few thousand. He should have liquidated those funds and put them in the money market accounts, put them into real estate, put them into annuities, put it in life insurance, in a whole life policy. These are the things that I would advise any aspiring rapper that's starting a business. Keep your money liquidated. You don't want too much sitting in a bank anyway. You're not going to get your money back. You're not going to get the money you deserve. You're barely going to get 0.5 to 1% interest every year. And then on top of that, if it's more than 10,000, you're getting taxed. It's going to be considered income. So he needed to set up a fiduciary shroud, which would have been an LLC or an S corp, and he could have encumbered his money in business expense. All the chains and the jewelry and all that kind of stuff could have been write-offs against his entertainment company. He should, and a lot of artists are getting wise. They're starting to sign other artists, so those artists become business expenses. They give the artist a certain amount of salary to operate under the guise of a work-for-hire agreement or an employee of that label as a musical artist. So quite naturally, an artist like him who becomes an international sensation, there's people in this circle that drop the ball. Because that 1.7 million, I can almost guarantee you he's got far more than that.
Oh, yeah.
But right now, he's in a catch-22 situation, and the feds know he's got more than that. That's why they got him on RICO. $1.7 million is nothing. But they got him on RICO because he has access to way more than that. And they don't know how influential he is in this 9 Trey Blood organization. because he has access to so many funds, because he knows people internationally. They're worried that his influence would be greater than the crime, henceforth the El Chapo or something like that. That's the new norm. Once one person does it, once you got somebody like El Chapo, that changes the whole RICO game automatically. No matter if whatever kind of level of money you make, because they're like, no, this is not going to happen again. This is why the feds are at 93% success rate. Once they do lose, they automatically fix the problem. They don't wait. So Tekashi 6ix9ine, and you don't hear too many people talk about it the way you did, Sam, because they don't watch that. He got access to more than 1.7 million. I promise you that.
Yeah, his manager, it was a clip where his manager, the guy shot his Treyway. He played a clip where he had 20 bank accounts at one point. This was like months ago, so yeah. And when that was real or not, I don't know. Right.
It more than likely, because when you're operating at that level, that's about as many as you're going to need. The average, when you're dealing with high volumes of money, you're going to have multiple accounts and different types of accounts. You're going to have trust accounts. You're going to have a lot of checking accounts because there's going to be a lot of escrow payments, meaning people in his position are going to pay their cell phone bill for the first 2 years. They're going to pay their rent for a year or two. So they're going to have escrow accounts where stuff is automatically paid out. So they have a proper ledger for their accountant at the end of the fiscal year. So sometime it'll take 6, 7, 8, 10, 20 bank accounts to do that, depending upon what type of financial endeavors you're in. So that's absolutely indicative of that. And if Shadi Treyway actually mentioned that, which I didn't know if he actually was ignorant enough to say that, that puts that even buried Tekashi even more.